So this is a great question. I'm actually going to go into this in depth in one of the two books that I'm currently working on outlining. And a lot of people are talking about this right now. I have kind of a unique view of this that I don't have time to go into like in a short video that I'm going to talk about in depth in the book. But essentially, I believe that neurodivergence is actually, it's an evolution. And we come into this reality placed differently. We're not as far connected to the physical reality. We have more of a spiritual connection as we come into reality. And so most of us, many of us, a lot of us are drawn to spiritual awakening. We're drawn to these questions of like, who am I and why am I here and what else am I connected to? Because we have an innate sense of that. From an early age, we have an innate sense of sort of being in the world, but not of it, not being quite the same as other people. A lot of us come in with psi gifts. If you haven't listened to the telepathy tapes, that's a great way to kind of explore that whole idea. And that's specifically more about nonverbal autistics. But if you, whatever neurodivergence you have, whether you're ADHD, autistic, ADHD, a lot of us of a certain age don't have official diagnoses, but we came in a little bit more open, and we came in a little bit more placed with connection to the spiritual realm. So a lot of us, it draws us naturally to explore these things and to try to figure out what our gifts are and where they came from. A lot of us of a certain age shut them down, and then later in life we're kind of trying to reopen them or just explore them or understand what they are. I think there's an innate questioning about the neurodivergent brain that sort of always wants to know a deeper why or understand why things are happening. So I think that neurodivergence, or what I like to think of now as neurospiciness, and spiritual awakening go hand in hand. Also, being neurodivergent inherently brings trauma into your life. Being in a system that's not designed with you in mind, that doesn't serve your unique needs as a neurodivergent person, inflicts trauma upon you growing up. So even if you grew up like with no developmental trauma, like your family was super loving and supportive and completely functional, which I guess maybe that exists somewhere, there is a lot of cultural trauma around being neurodivergent. Whether you have sensitivities, like I have hearing sensitivities, the world is not created for people who are sensitive to sound. That's a good example, but just one example of like probably thousands of the ways that I acted weird as a kid. And people didn't like that because they want you to like fit into a little box. They want you to like learn all these social norms. We stand out, and so sometimes we get picked on because of that, and that causes trauma. And trauma healing naturally leads to spiritual awakening. If you go far enough down the trauma healing rabbit hole, path, journey, you invariably end up at spiritual awakening. And I've done some podcast episodes about this. There's one, I think it's called Neurodivergence and the 5D. I've done a lot of things. There's one called How Trauma Healing Leads to Spiritual Awakening. So if you want kind of more in-depth discussions around that, those might be good resources for you. And you can find them in the place that I'm not going to mention.